Welcome to A Dram of Outlander. This is Desiree, your podcaster and a writer for adramofOutlander.com. Join me for in-depth discussions of the Outlander book series by Diana Gabaldon, the Starz television series, and anything interesting that falls between. This is podcast episode 153. We're in season 4, episode 402 of the television series, and this episode is called Do No Harm. It was directed by Julian Holmes and written for television by Karen Campbell. And the summary goes something like this. Claire, Jamie, young Ian and Rollo arrive at Aunt Jocasta's plantation, River Run. Aunt Jocasta extends every hospitality, learning they were robbed. Young Ian and Rollo meet a wicked predator. We meet a mountain man. Claire's sensibilities and beliefs are on the edge. Aunt Jocasta hatches a MacKenzie-style plan. There's a party with the who's who of the area in honor of their arrival. An incident puts Jamie and Claire between what's right and what's the law. So the themes I pulled out are Jamie is again in a down-and-out position and feeling responsible for it all. He cannot protect or care for his family in the way he wants, and it puts him in a very precarious position going to his wealthy aunt's plantation. Family matters, and Jocasta needs an heir. That is directly linked to Jamie's social position at the moment and slavery. I have put in to the bottom of the written post for the podcast, and if you're listening through any streaming service like Apple Podcasts or Google Play, Spotify, within there you'll be able to see what I'm talking about because my entire several pages of notes are also in there. And I put some information on slavery in North Carolina during this time. And very interesting, there were free people, African Americans, Black people, in that area until the early 1700s when laws started being passed. And then the more restrictive laws were passed in this time period that Jamie and Claire are in North Carolina at Aunt Jocasta's. So it gets stricter and stricter on the slaves. And another thing that is interesting about this is that North Carolina had actually very few slaves in comparison to the other colonies. And it's because the only port city that it has is the Wilmington area, which is where River Run is. So it was pretty bad for slaves in that area and more restrictive than others. Neighboring colonies, you could free them and they would stay free as long as they had their letter, right? Or you could send them up north and they'd stay free. But as we can see in this episode, that would be quite a monumental task for the amount of slaves that Jocasta has. Okay. So I'm going to start and break it down sort of like last week where I brought in kind of major points. I'm not going to do a play-by-play in the episode. There's other people that are doing that. And you can find that everywhere. So I'm just taking it from the viewing standpoint of this time, what I find confusing, what are square things and round holes, what's good, mixed bag, things to ponder, favorite lines, and the links of interest. So I try to set it up to make you think and add your own things, and I really do want your feedback. You can either call the listener line at 719-425-9444, or you can send me an email at contact@adramofOutlander.com, or you can send me a message or comment on the Facebook group where we have the viewing discussion post, and you have to join the Facebook group. It's A Dram of Outlander in groups, and you have to answer a few questions. But I will get back to you if you send me a message particularly. And if you send anything to Jan because she's writing written posts about very specific parts of an episode, then I will make sure she gets the message for you. What did I find confusing in this episode? Well, first of all, the timeline isn't discernible for how long Jamie and Claire stay at River Run before the dinner party or the incident with Rufus and Overseer Byrnes. What this looks like is a matter of just a few days. I find that very fast, right? It just seems like there's so much going on. They can't even get their breath about them. They're not even integrated into the community at all. And at the dinner party, we don't even see Jamie talking to anybody. Only Claire is talking about some local politics, her and young Ian. I wish you could see my face right now. I'm making the face. But why isn't Jamie social networking, right? Like, he should be out there rolling it. That's what Jamie does. That's what he did in the first season. That's what he did in France. That was his job. He was out, like, being a spy kind of thing and getting in everybody's business and making it work. So we didn't get to see that. I'm really interested when they post the script because I want to see what was edited out of the final viewing. I mean, if there's essential things being left out, so we're left to question and have no idea, then making the episodes 70 minutes, 75 minutes, because they can make them as long as they want. They don't have to make it 48 minutes because of commercial breaks, right? So they have more latitude. So I'd rather them leave more in than rush us or leave things out that they have filmed that really are important. I mean, shows, movies are made or broken by the editing process. And I think it's important to why Jocasta named him heir so swiftly without seeing him really acting administratively or performing the business management duties she needs help with. Jamie appears not to have looked at her business dealings until after the public announcement. Really? One discussion with Wolff and Jocasta following his business acumen from afar? That's enough? I mean, is she that desperate? I mean, we know by one sliding comment that Wolff had marriage designs on her, but that would be really easy to miss because she's a wealthy woman who is blind and she cannot speak on her own. In this particular place, at this particular time, she needs a man to do her bidding. And Ulysses can't do it, even though he's her eyes and extra ears and hands, because he's her servant and he's an African-American man. Okay, so Jamie was laird of Lallybroch for a short time, with Jenny and Ian doing most of the work. He was in hiding in prison, working a sentence off, and then went to go and work with Jared for those short months in Paris. And so Jocasta receiving a letter about him working with Jared, that is satisfactory that he's good at his job or good at running things. That to me doesn't pass muster. I mean, it would have to be over time that she would see how he works at meetings and how he thinks and how he puts two and two together and how he has plans for them to have an advantageous financial and business future for her plantation. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, his bonafides don't add up without Jocasta seeing him in action. That's what it comes down to. I'm like, that's why if it would have been a month later, or we would have seen, a quick shot of him doing things in the background. Like, he wasn't just hanging out with Claire the whole time. All right. Again, I wish you could see my face, even though I'm definitely made for radio, not video. All right. The plot device of Jamie only learning about the difficult slavery laws of the colony after the announcement to make him an heir and the incident between Rufus and Byrnes is so problematic to me. Jamie knew about the other laws and even the regulators. Surely he would have asked about slavery and all it entailed, knowing his aunts in MacKenzie, knowing they're going to be staying at her plantation for some time, right? How does this work here? What do we have? It is a kind and right notion for Jamie to want to be so pie-eyed and Pollyanna about working to release them if he took on the running of River Run. But the road to hell is often paved with good intentions and unintended consequences. Right? Okay. In the first season, Jamie knew everything that was going on at Lallybroch. He knew what was going on back at Lallybroch. I mean, he had a handle on everything. The guy doesn't miss a thing. Season 2, he's being a spy, essentially, in France. He's working for his cousin, but he knows what all the armies are doing. He ingratiates himself. He gets to be a top-tier dude and has a handle on all the inner workings. Did he just lose that ability? Season 3, the guy's a smuggler. He knows what's going on. He knows how to keep his businesses separate. He knows the ins and outs. He knows who's who and what's important. And just right now, this time, he's somehow not going to be a mover and shaker, making connections, talking to people, figuring it out. That is so weird to me. It's completely out of character for his TV character to be in the dark about something so important in a community, in the community in North Carolina that actually has slaves. Yeah. So that's really confusing to me. What about you? I'd like to hear. I thought it was weird that he was so 20th century without making sense of it. They didn't even touch on the fact that he was basically enslaved while he was at Hellwater. He was a prisoner in the open. He couldn't leave without permission. He had to stay there for the rest of his life if it hadn't been arranged for him to be released. He doesn't want to be a slave. He doesn't want to enslave people. People aren't property to him. But why? Didn't even talk about that. Instead, so many minutes were spent on explaining this stuff when it could have been done in one of his conversations with Claire, him going, "Babe, Sassenach, I understand. But we can't just do this because of the laws, because of the culture, because of the..." Put the words in there. So valuable time was taken, and that was kind of hammered back at us on screen. Squares and round holes is the next segment. John Quincy Myers, the wild mountain man, just happens to be on the property and is the one person who knows how to help young Ian with the skunk-perfumed Rollo. I actually squealed when we get to meet him, but then he's useless. They live someplace where there are skunks. So I'm thinking that people and farm animals are going to be getting sprayed sort of on a routine basis. You don't think that one of Jocasta's servants would know how to deal with it? It takes the guy who happens to be in town from the mountains. I just eye rolled really, really hard. Super hard. Did you feel it? Then John Quincy Myers goes poof, and we don't see him again during the episode. If she's his good friend, why is she not inviting him to her party? Okay. I just eye rolled again. Sorry. So this whole scene screams, "Hey viewers, he might be important later. And we wanted you to beat him now." Secondly, he's either ill-mannered or completely oblivious in speaking to young Ian, a lad of 16, in such a way. But readers, I think you get my vibe on this scene. Talking about his hairy butt and how the Indian lassies, maybe he's a novelty item. And then his mom, like, must have mated with buffalo. Like, I didn't even get that. It was weird to me. There's many more things he could have told young Ian about the Indians that he's so interested in. Okay. That's my square peg in a round hole. A way of mashing scenes together because we didn't want to miss out on those or that character, but he was really of no use. And he was poorly used, in my humble opinion. So I'm not just going to complain. Let's go to the good. Maria Doyle Kennedy as Aunt Jocasta Cameron. She convinces me she is a MacKenzie through and through. Is her stature quite the expectation? No. But her mannerisms, her speech, her frame of mind and mentality and the way she does things, she's rather ruthless. The other new faces, Ulysses, Phaedra, Lieutenant Wolff, John Quincy Myers, and Farquhar Campbell, are also well cast and believable. And then as an aside, just my personal thoughts, I am always struck wondering what the experience is playing the part of a slave or a slave owner, or something that's really diabolical, or something that is reprehensible in a person's mind. Like, I don't want to play serial killer either, right? But in this case, they both caused my heart to ache. The fact that people believed that they couldn't run, quote, businesses, plantations with all these businesses without slave labor, that they couldn't pay wages. Well, up north they paid wages. And guess what? They had profitable businesses. Huh. So it's very odd to me that in this location, in what became the United States of America, was so hell-bent on making that a truth. And yes, there have been slaves throughout history, but this is our modern history that we have to look at. I liked the fact that Clamy, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. That is such an ugly combination of names. Like Fursily. Like, I don't normally mash them up. I'm totally keeping this in here because it's hilarious. Claire and Jamie being a partnership that they can't own slaves, I think is really good, even if it's not explained. I like how they proceeded together in trying for true justice, treating Rufus, and subsequently understanding his soul is what matters because the law is against them. They really stand unified. And I'm glad at some point Jamie really has to clarify the culture and the law to Claire. Like, she didn't even think to ask. Which normally he's the one who's really the detail person, and he kind of knows all the things going on wherever they are. And she's just in her own little, like, circle doing her thing. She's on planet Claire, doing the things that she wants to do. So to have him not be that person and was odd to me. I didn't like that. Young Ian's sweet heart when learning about Jocasta's blindness and his compassion for the American Indians as people and not savages. He drew the parallel between Highlanders and American Indians. There are some parallels. And sadly, having been to Scotland, I think that the Scottish people have still been successful in life and grown, and there are still hardship based on the diminishment of their country and their language and for some, their whole manner of life up in the north. But American Indians, Native Americans, the tribal people in the United States of America have, as I've discussed before, if you listened during the book read-along, have really been so damaged. Really, if you don't know the history here, read about it. It will change your whole vantage point. And now we can find it. When I was growing up, it was very whitewashed. Now you can find the stark truth everywhere, which is good. It's really gut-wrenching. The other thing I loved about young Ian is that he's shows great steel as Claire's surgical assistant. It doesn't make him blink. It doesn't bother him, the blood, the pain. He can just do it with her. Jocasta's butler Ulysses, speaking plainly to Claire about what is to come for Rufus if he lives and how saving his soul is better than what's to come. He basically took her to church. He gave her a lesson. And that was very risky for him to do because as a slave, even a house slave, speaking so openly to a white person, a free person, could get you even killed. It could be considered a great problem. He explained that Rufus would be used as an example for the other slaves to obey. Jamie says the same thing to Claire when he realizes Rufus will not be allowed to live no matter what. I like how these conversations mirrored each other, one from each, a free man and a slave. That I liked. That felt clever and fresh. To have Ulysses be brave that way and to tell her she was wrong. She went against their culture. Whether it was the right thing to do or not in her mind, she was wrong and she was actually causing harm. Remember the episode's called Do No Harm. Claire's loving and kind bedside manner connecting with Rufus as he was dying. We have seen her do this before to send a soul off peacefully and with comfort. It matters. It does matter how we help somebody leave, just like how we greet someone into this world. Those transitions are very powerful and important. And I'm glad that that was there. I found that to be very comforting and deeply emotional and really helped me connect to that scene. Finally, Jamie's prayer as the clock strikes midnight. Rufus dies from the poison, and Jamie delivers the limp body back to the waiting men. Jamie crosses himself and prays, I'm bending my knee in the eye of the Father who created me. Pour down from heaven the rich blessing of thy forgiveness. Be thou patient with us. Grant to us, Savior of glory, the love of God, and the will to do on earth at all times as angels and saints do in heaven. Give us the peace. And to that I say, Amen. He didn't say amen, but I'm saying it. I found that to be profoundly beautiful. And to let Jamie's faith show, to give him the space to be religious. I think this season, the writers have to figure out, they had to, and going forward, how to deal with spiritual things, how to deal with faith and religion and prayer and God or gods, spirits, because they're among the American Indians now. You can't separate that from their culture. You can't separate it from their way of life, or you're just butchering their foundation of how they live. And I'd like to add to this, I really like that Claire said she was a Catholic. Even though she says she doesn't believe, she has these great supernatural experiences, right? She's traveled through the stones, for goodness sake. How can she not believe in the supernatural and the spiritual and in something else? outside of us. She can't simply be an agnostic or an atheist scientist. She's seen more, she's felt more, she's experienced more. It's there. So, okay. Love that. And so for me, that it really enriches what we're seeing and gives dimension to the different things that are going on, the hardships, the deaths, the lives, the good things, the bad things. That I totally love. Okay, now we come to something I call mixed bag. Originally, both of these things were in the good category until I started thinking about them again. And I had to retype them. So the mixed bag points that I have are Claire's unwavering belief that people should not be owned. Seeing her fight the need to save the young man and not to cause unintended harm was a beautiful struggle to behold. Sometimes the right answer requires courage and action we can never see coming. The downside to this staunch and brooding belief is that she isn't culturally aware or sensitive. As Ulysses pointed out, did she have to bludgeon the idea home over and over? Slavery is revolting, but she could have found a way to not sulk around and find a way through the situation without inadvertently putting the slaves in harm's way and without threatening Jocasta's home and land, which she did. Slavery is unconscionable. History, when allowed, will speak it loud and clear without Claire being more entrenched and rasher in action because of her 20th century beliefs. I cannot imagine being in that situation. How to act in a dignified and respectful way to the slaves. How to be there knowing they have no choice but to serve me. I don't know what I would do, but I don't think I would find ways to make their life harder because it's the right thing to do. Again, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. That is a saying for a reason. It's because you have to think through the intended and unintended consequences. What might happen? You have to think beyond, it feels good. It sounds like the right thing to do. But it's really not. In that moment, it's really not. And then you have to take from that moment and find a way to make things better for these people. It might be small incremental ways. It might be working alongside abolitionists, those Quakers, to get this stuff to change. But it's a process that doesn't happen overnight, especially people's encultured beliefs and systems and ways of life. I believe in 200 years, people are going to be looking at us and think that we are savages in a lot of ways. They are going to think we were off our rockers and out of our minds for some of our belief systems today and for how we treat people. I mean, be careful of casting stones, right? Because you might be the one who's the most offensive of all, to somebody else. So righteousness and piousness and doing the right thing, we all want to do the right thing. But we also have to know and think what happens next. You have to sit down and map that out. Claire's not good at that. Usually Jamie is her rock and foundation, so she understands. Did she just forget that she accidentally caused a riot and had to buy a slave? Yes, well, in the West Indies, she could set him free. He could become part of the Maroons. You can't do that in the colonies. So her lack of sensitivity and seeing outside of herself really is usually buffered by Jamie's knowledge because he knows everything. And he gets all the 411 on everything. Is that still a thing? Do people say that? For those of you who don't know, because you've never seen a regular phone in your life. You've only had cell phones. It used to be we would dial. Yeah, not just push buttons or touch a pad. We would actually dial a phone and dial 411 if we wanted information from the operator. There's your 20th century history lesson. Yes, sorry, I'm middle-aged. So, there's that. And secondly, I was struck so hard at the closing sequence. I applaud the realistic and brutal portrayal of slavery as it was in the American colonies. I believe we must confront the good and bad in our collective history through any and every medium. The entertainment industry is an important vehicle, especially when the simple and often harsh truths are allowed to be represented and no agenda or politics get in the way. Time might heal some wounds, but others need intervention and social change to be righted even a little bit. That said, I do think, like the theme of circle, or circles, in episode 401, it was heavy-handed without allowing the viewer to make the emotional, ethical, and moral leaps on his or her own. Outlander viewers are by and large people who can critically think and get what the writers are trying to say. We don't need to be spoon-fed. As a matter of fact, when babies are food ready, they shouldn't be spoon-fed either. They do the act of feeding themselves. Anyway, I digress. And lastly, in the mixed bag category, is the idea Jocasta would assume Claire to be a Quaker because of her abolitionist beliefs is simply odd. The southern colonies had slaves, but as far as I know, the northern colonies did not. Now, could there have been some? I know there were some indentured servants because people would go into servitude for an amount of time for their passage from England or Scotland, right? But it was for a period of time and they would work off their debt. And if they could somehow pay back their debt earlier, they would be free, right? But as far as I know, there weren't West African slave trade going on in the north. So Jocasta, I think, is pretty smart. She's been there a long time. And then I just said, for some reason, viewers really, really need to know that Quakers may be of importance to future storylines. That just felt like I was being hit on the head with the Quakers. I'm shaking my head. You can't see that. You can't hear it either. There are not rocks in my head. So this is where some of the unevenness in the episode went. And I really think that some of this could have been handled, like Claire lying that she treated some Quakers and she found truth in what they had to say. How about saying she's been to the north and she's seen how they do it? She's been telling people she spent time in Boston and she didn't know Jamie was alive. How about saying, well, they don't do it this way in Boston? Right? Kind of weird disconnect. So that's, okay. Things to ponder. The color blue is seen throughout the decor and in clothing during the episode. Is it a nod to the indigo trade or something else? I don't know what the blue signifies. Will we be meeting Quakers in the future? Will we see more of John Quincy Myers? Will Jamie take Governor Tryon's offer? Will we see Jamie in a kilt this season? He is free to wear one. Have we seen the last of Stephen Bonnet? And where's Murtaugh? That's going to be like, where's Waldo? Where's Murtaugh? And, okay, we did see in the trailer for next episode, we will see John Quincy Myers. And when they were talking politics at the party, that Quakers have something to do with the regulators. So it's there. But one of the things about Governor Tryon's offer now is that Jamie and Claire did not ingratiate themselves to this community at all. Like, they just wreaked havoc, and there's no trust, and they look like outsiders who refuse to adhere to the way of life that these people have established. Right or wrong, it doesn't matter. That's how they're perceived. And that was the one thing that I didn't type that I meant to, was that not having a surgery during the party where the community at large, the movers and shakers of the community, could see what Claire is capable of and see her like skill as a healer, they got no street cred. They don't know these people. They are outsiders. These are tight-knit communities. So there really would have been benefit to there being some kind of medical scene during that party instead of making a drawn-out medical scene with Rufus. They could have done it all. And they could have made the Rufus storyline count and be meaningful and powerful without making it the vehicle in which everyone's mad at Claire and Jamie now. Everyone's pissed off, and she's put Jocasta at risk as well as the slaves at risk. So they're going to have like no choice but to choose this. So being backed in the corner to make a decision, because like, are they going to be comfortable and be able to stay there? No. So that seems like kind of a weak plot device to me. Okay, moving on. So what were my favorite lines? There are numerous warm fuzzies from the book, regardless of who the lines were given. Okay? But these that I'm giving you stand out in particular to me. We learn that Jocasta has lost most her vision, but has now been gifted with hearing that would be the envy of many gossip, and the ability to scent truth from lies, if you catch my meaning. So Jocasta's saying right there, don't mess with me. I may not be able to see you, but I can hear you. And if you're lying, I'll know. So she gave a nice warning there. Like that was a shot across the bow that she's an alpha dog. Don't you try an alpha dog here, because that's my job. There's been a run-in with the scary and horrible skunk. Young Ian says, it lifted its tail and sprayed a foul liquid from its arse. I about spit. I love that. Jocasta says to Claire, Jenny was right about you. You are a peculiar lass. If that doesn't sound like a backhanded compliment, I don't know what does. On one hand, Jocasta is intrigued by Claire. And on the other hand, she's definitely worried about her. And her antennae are up. What else do you think Jenny told her about Claire? She probably said, you be careful. That woman, that's probably what Jenny said. She's a witch. She's an old folk. She's bad news. But my brother loves her. Oh, that sounds like so many stories and people's relationships that we know. When Jocasta adds definition to how Claire speaks her mind on all manner of topics, whether she knows about them or not, that was also part of Jenny's saying, Claire responds, the same could be said for Jenny. There's some humor for Claire. Yay, thank you, writers. Jocasta likes her fiery spirit, but she's cautious. Claire to Jamie after he tries to be positive about benevolent slave ownership and forging change. Fuses often lead to explosions. And Jamie's response to Claire, aye, but when the dust settles, oftentimes the devil you're fighting is gone. Mayhaps he's talking about Blackjack Randall. The funny thing is, I liked those lines, but I have no idea what they have to do with slavery in North Carolina or on this plantation. If you know, please let me know. So, I do have links of interest in here, like I said. about where the phrase "do no harm" comes from. It's not in the Hippocratic Oath. So there's 2 links, one for the Harvard Health blog that talks about how difficult this is actually to put into play, and from the British Medical Journal. And really what it refers to is don't overdo medical treatment. You can cause harm by doing too much. Sometimes simple is better. And you have to know when to back off and respect the process as physicians. I put a link in about Quakers and their stand on slavery. Super fascinating. The Quakers were the first white people to form an abolitionist society. And way back, this is their stance the whole time. So it's fascinating reading, so please go there and look at it. And I also posted information about the poison aconite Claire uses on the young man Rufus. Now, interestingly, the side effects can include nausea, vomiting, respiratory distress, inability to breathe, and paralysis while you're still alert. Yay! Can't move, but you know what's going on, and you can feel it all. And subsequently death. So she gave him a large amount. And Outlander medicine, my friend Karen Doherty, the doctor, we were messaging back and forth about this. And she said, I really question the fact that Claire has a serious poison at the very front of her available options. Like that should have like cross and bones on it. Should be in a special place to where you don't accidentally use it and give it orally to a human thinking you're grabbing something else. I hadn't thought of that, but dang it, Karen is right. Like that is bad placement on Claire's part. Like why would she have such a serious poison in the front of her medicine box? Anyway, so I put a link in there about the side effects and uses of aconite if you're so interested. So what's my bottom line? It took me 2 viewings before I could get a handle on this episode. I think us devoted book readers need to watch more than once to firmly separate one from the other. Because as hard as we try, we have built-in expectations and we have built-in things that we want to see, and we get excited. Like I was so excited to meet John Quincy Myers, and I was like, mer, mer. Yeah. We have the blessing and curse of knowing the material being adapted. I like this episode for the most part. I have a few gripes so far this season. The choppiness and the flow scene to scene and episode to episode. Like, why didn't they discuss the ring being taken? Really? Not just the gems, so now Jamie can't provide? So his masculinity is being, offended? The sense of feeling rushed from one place to the next without taking time to savor or deepen important moments or characters. Then, slowing way down for one event. And being spoon-fed what writers deem important. Like this episode, rush through all these important factors of getting to know each other and getting to know the culture and the life and the who's who and how are they going to make that decision? What does it mean to become the heir? Like all that stuff was just ramped up so quickly that we didn't have development of relationship. Like Jocasta saying, oh, I love you like you're my own. Okay, I do understand in some cultures, like you're buying your mind. It doesn't matter if you're my 17th cousin once removed, right? You're my family and I'm taking you in. But to say she cares for him like her own and she hasn't seen him since he was little, right? Years. And only to get letters from overseas. Okay. So like he'd been writing her this whole time, and they maintained this lush relationship, right? Anyhow. If the writing is solid, there's no need to put the point on repeat. There's no need. This is not like marketing where you have to see it X amount of times before you remember, or so many billboards advertising, or it takes roughly 60 days to develop a new habit. Like, that's not how this works. I mean, the writers need to trust the writing. Trust the material. Trust it. Trust your viewers to be smart. I do know longtime book readers or even new book readers who that's where they found Outlander, or they found the show and then found the books, that are so disappointed that something that has such deep writing and detailed writing and really gives you this image, like this full image of what's going on. It is not bare bones what Diana Gabaldon does. That they're really struggling to still watch the show and enjoy it. And it's, as I keep saying over and over since season 1, they're separate universes. But it doesn't remove the love of the books if you read them. Because we read them more than once. They're mine. They're my friends. They're your friends too. They look different, sound different, but they're mine. What's mine is mine. And I have to watch repeatedly to get any kind of unbiased look at this and say, as a viewer, and ask people who don't read the books, like, what do you think? Because that's the only way for me to kind of get an idea if I'm on the right track or not. Because I have to watch it several times, at least 3 times usually, before I can fully commit to what I'm going to say. Because I have to see it through the lens of just a viewer. And I have to take out my own expectations. And I have to sit back and remember who these characters are that the writers have represented for us. Who have they written for us to see? Because they're different than what we see in the books. And that's fine. Like, I get that wholeheartedly. You know, and I kind of laugh. And when I first started watching Shetland, I was like, oh, that's based on a book series. And so, of course, what do? Is I get all the available Shetland series books by Anne Cleves. And then by the time I get to the 4th episode of Shetland, the show is so incredibly good, right? Oh my gosh, it's amazing. But it doesn't look anything like the books. And by episode 4 of the first season, the writer's room is just writing in the spirit of the books. And you know what? It kicks ass. And one of the things I'm seeing, and if you haven't read the books, you can ignore this and just fast forward like a minute, is that sometimes there are passages from the books that the writers really want to fit in. They really want to use it, but they don't really make sense. Like Phaedra talking about Claire's coloring and bosoms to die for. Katrina is a beautiful woman, but she's not this voluptuous, busty, booby woman. Like, that's not what you notice about her. So to put that line on her is odd. Like Jamie using the roundest ass he's ever seen. She doesn't have the roundest ass, right? Like, it's okay. But those are the 2 things that pop in my head, right? Because they're obvious. But when you try and fit the lines in for the sake of the lines, sometimes they just don't make sense. I would rather the writer's room write something new in the spirit if it doesn't fit. Just giving us lines because you know that readers are watching, that does not make for good viewing material. And it's frustrating. Right? And so that's part of what I think we're seeing here is it's trying to get like wedged and jacked into places where other places things are made up and they don't add any quality. Like if I'm watching it, I'm like, well, we could take that whole 4-minute scene out and it didn't do much. It's because the writer's room was like, that's awesome. It's sort of like a joke on Saturday Night Live. I haven't watched that show in, I don't know, a decade and a half. But the jokes that go on, they should, if they'd like cut it at 45 seconds to 60 seconds, it would have been golden, but they go on for 2.5 minutes and you're like, oh my God, can you stop? There's some of that here. Like the writers got to trust themselves. They got to trust the characters they've written and they got to trust the process. And they got to trust their viewers. And don't give us stuff that they think we want. And then make it be like, meh. Okay. So that's, I think, some of the frustration for the readers, because we try very, very hard to separate the book and not just complain about what's missing. I didn't even talk about the stuff that was different or missing because that's not the point. But I do want to address the readers in this podcast because many of you listen during off season when I'm doing the read along. I have lots of downloads. So I'm speaking to you too. I'm not just talking to you as a viewer who hasn't read the material. And it matters what you think. And I want to hear what you think. Because part of it, I asked somebody a question on the Facebook group. Oh, we're going to go long. Look at that. On the Facebook group, because they had mentioned something significant to them, significant in the book, was missing at the party. And I said, if you hadn't read the books and that was missing, would it matter? Like, if you could back up and say, if someone told you that it was missing, would it matter? No. Because the scene wasn't set up that way. The development didn't happen that way. That's not the direction they're taking it. So, there you go. That's my $1.25 or maybe $5. So, I do want to remind you that the voice listener line is 719-425-9444. And the email is contact@adramaofoutlander.com. Please give me your comments, your thoughts, your feedback. And, it may be included in a future podcast or written post. Okay, so I'm going to go through the mail real quick. I got several emails. From Patricia Townsend. I absolutely agree with your comments about the last 5 minutes of episode 401. The way it was done was so terrifying that I actually feared that Jamie was going to be killed. My intellect knew that was not possible, but the sheer horror of seeing the violence without being able to hear the sounds intensified it beyond belief. I don't remember even being completely aware of the song, although I heard it. The words didn't even register. I was so afraid of what was happening. Yeah, that was powerful and scary. I do. At first it jarred me, and then when I watched it a second time, it totally, I immersed in it. It was great. Okay, so this is from Frances. She just finished the podcast and had a few thoughts. I was shocked that it was our Hayes that was hanged, meaning Book Hayes, because we didn't know him very well. I had the character from the book in my head. He reminded me of Rupert at his end. They both stood up as men, coming out from behind their clown. He did not want to see anyone else in peril because of him. It is always shocking to see how a person can go from alive to dead in a second. We do not have to be quite so forthright and practical when someone dies. They had to put their emotions to side and decide how they would see him buried. Keith Fleming, Leslie, had a very nice singing voice. I think Ian's reaction during the digging of the grave was very well done. It worked extremely well to give Jamie a chance to truly offer help, especially once Ian asked if he had ever lain with someone and didn't want to. Yeah, my mind immediately went to both Blackjack Randall and Geneva. Not many others would have had the experience to be able to help Ian as he did. And she goes on to say that she felt the essence of the dinner party was there with Governor Tryon, and Ian and Rollo are as cute as expected. And she's glad to see Fergus and Marcelline this season. And she thought the sex between Jamie and Claire was an occasion of life affirmation. She didn't expect it to be wild. That said, we are both alive. And she says the juxtaposition of the fight and Ray Charles singing America the Beautiful was very moving, and it cut to the chase. Yes, there's great beauty and there's great ugliness. Given when it aired, it certainly makes people consider where society is right now. Whew. Okay. Thank you, Frances. Prudence says, I hardly heard the music at the end of 401. I was so engrossed with the fantastic drama on the screen. I love the whole episode. I'm an Australian, but we too have some really nasty stuff that happened in our early history that we should not deny or sweep under the carpet. Thank you, Prudence, and thank you for affirming that. Many countries have been built on beauty and torture, right? I appreciate you for saying that. It's a learning curve, and it's a process in which we're still coming to terms with and trying to figure out as a society. And I know that's been going on for you guys too. It's a continuing process. It's not a one-off event saying, oh, we're going to treat the native people better. Oh, we're going to do this. All of a sudden, slaves are free. Like, you can't do that. It's an ongoing process. Through the course of every day, which turns into history, that once was the future. So, there you have it. Kiss Lena says, beautiful review as always, dear lady. I truly appreciate your sensitivity to the themes that will be revealed in this season. As a descendant of African slaves with European ancestry, Scottish, I have a complicated view of learning about this history. It's weird to hold myself at a distance from the pain and brutality that brought those cultures together, later resulting in me. Oh, that gives me the shivers. But the truth demands respect and acknowledgement. I enjoy learning about Scotland as much as I enjoy learning about Africa or the other trace regions in my DNA. Oh, thank you. Many kisses to you. That was beautiful. It made me tear up. I'm such a mush. I'm such a tough chick, and then I'm a big old mush in my heart. And Anne commented, you keep calling Claire's ring from Jamie's silver. It's iron or brass, so pretty worthless monetarily. Diana Gabaldon had good reasons why Frank's gold ring would have been recognized by Bree, so that reason for changing the ring doesn't fly with me. Since the writer saw fit to change what ring Claire got when they got married, they should have left well enough alone. Okay, Anne, you're right, and I did message her back. I did, because it was a knee-jerk reaction to the original Celtic ring that Claire would have gotten in the book. I didn't even realize I was doing it, and you're the only person who pointed that out to me. Yes, it would have been iron, because it was a key to Lallybroch. And I don't know, I'm telling you, that's what Ron Moore said. They changed it for recognizability, like at a quick glance. And I don't necessarily think that Bonnet took it for monetary value. He took it because he could. It was a power grab. It was a power play. It was hers, and he wanted it. He wanted whatever he could take. The gems were about the money. That was thievery. This was about power and fear and control and taking what he could. Because, like you pointed out in the books, it was a gold ring. He wore it on his pinky, which means he kept it. It became I don't know if it was sentimental. It became a symbol to him for what he could do. He played them. He put fear in their hearts. And he took from Claire what was precious to her. So I think the motivation was not just money. But I would not have questioned it if they would have left good enough alone and it would have been Frank's ring. Because I'd be like, well, it was recognizable in the books, so why not? So anyway, there's that. And thank you, Anne. I appreciate being called out when I've messed up. So that, my friends, ends that part of the podcast. Thank you so much for your input, and I just want more every week. You guys, you got it. I also did put a poll on the Drama of Outlander group, whether you want to do kind of a live show after or some kind of live show or live viewing event during the season. So go in and vote. So, where can you find a Drama of Outlander? Woo! Again, Facebook page, Facebook group, Instagram, Drama of Outlander, Twitter, Drama of Outlander, Google Plus, A Drama of Outlander, and Tumblr. How can you support the podcast? Well, obviously, you support it most by engaging on social media and sharing the podcast. Going into Apple Podcasts through iTunes or Spotify or Google Play and giving a review. Every 5-star review helps people find me, helps more people come to the podcast. And if you like my content, probably other people will. So share it with your friends or people you know. Share it on your own social media pages. And that helps. That's the biggest thing that helps. Word of mouth, right? It's the best marketing ever. The other way you can support the podcast is financially. Every dollar counts. I do this on my own. Front end, back end, the whole thing is me. And I'm thankful to have a gracious spouse that's like, keeps you off the streets, honey. I don't care if it costs us a few bucks, but it is a lot of time and energy. And there are replacement costs and upkeep, obviously. And you can go to patreon.com/adramaofoutlander. And like I said, even $1, it all counts to me. And I really appreciate you. So lastly, again, comments, questions, thoughts, criticism, critiques. 719-425-9444 or contact@adramaofoutlander.com. So look forward to next week. It looks like the Frasers are getting, and young Murray are getting the hell out of River Run. And John Quincy Myers is showing him the way. So until next time, Slán je va.